Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and in the studio with me, Chris Hedges, and I'm so pleased to have Chris with us. He arguably needs no introduction, but graduate of the Harvard Divinity School, longtime war correspondent in foreign theaters, that some just god-awful stuff you've seen. You are one of the most brilliant writers I know. I love your writing is so evocative. And you dig, the War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning, which is a mind-blowing book. Chris's new book is America: The Farewell Tour. Chris Hedges, welcome.
Thanks, Tom.
So happy to have you here with us. Your book is broken into chapters that are rather stark in their single-word titles: Decay, Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Heroin, 3, Work, 4, Sadism, 5, or sadism, right? 5, Hate, 6, Gambling, 7, Freedom. Why and what do these mean?
It comes out of Durkheim's great study on suicide, published in 1897, where he went out and wanted to look at what it is that drove individuals and communities to acts of self-annihilation. And he looked for these pathologies of self-destruction. And that's what I wanted to do. He coined the term anomie, which in the French translation is rulelessness.
A-N-I-M-E?
A-N-A, that's early, A-N-A-M-I-E, right.
I see.
Anomie, which is essentially the rules break down, the social bonds, the social contract breaks down. And that breakdown, that isolation, that alienation, that sense of despair and hopelessness manifests itself in self-destructive behaviors, which are rippling across the United States. And so what I wanted to do is write about American anomie, in essence, the root cause of what I see as the deep malaise within American society that has given rise to a very frightening and dangerous figure like Donald Trump, but arguing that Trump is the symptom, not the disease, that until we rebuild those social bonds, until we address what's happened within the fabric of American society and how it has been destroyed, then removing Trump isn't going to solve our problem. In fact, of course, Noam Chomsky argues, probably correctly, that Michael Pence will be worse because he comes out of the Christian fascist movement that 10 years ago I examined in a book called American Fascists, the Christian Right and the War in America.
Right. Brilliant. I should add, by the way, for our listeners on X-Ray FM here in Portland, that you're going to be at Powell's tonight. And
the great Powell's bookstore.
Indeed. It's, I can wonderful. Spend days there.
And they ship. So somebody should have never told me that because
Powell's.com.
Boxes go home.
Yeah. And in addition, you're on the road for a tour. So for our listeners all over the country, check out, is there a website for you or
There's
for the book?
a Twitter account, which I don't run, but they post.
Okay. Check out Chris Hedges' Twitter account. So it seems to me that and looking at this with, kind of overview, that when societies are torn apart, like you're talking about, when the social fabric comes unraveled, it seems that historically, and whether you're looking at the United States, whether it's the Great Depression, whether it was the Civil War, whether it's what's going on right now, whether it was Chile with Pinochet, whether it was Germany in the 30s and Italy and Spain, I mean, name your country. It seems like the precipitating factor or the major kind of pry bar that got in there that popped the first plates off was that of great wealth. It was
I would call it
taking by the overclass.
Yeah, but that wasn't true in Chile, of course, under Allende. It's economic crisis. So because of Henry Kissinger and the CIA, and the IMF, and they orchestrated a crisis in Chile. They created a crisis. There was fuel shortages and everything else. Weimar or I covered the war in Yugoslavia, which was also caused by an economic meltdown. What it is in essence the established political elites are unable to respond in a rational and effective way to increasing distress within the society, and then are finally discredited by usually an economic crisis. In our case, you had the destruction of the popular movements, including labor unions, and I would argue the press, that once protected American working men and women. In essence, and both the Republicans and Democrats, especially under Clinton, are culpable. So the system seizes up. It's seized by a cabal, in this case, corporate. So all of the institutions rewrite the laws. Matt Taibbi had a good book on this divide. There's essentially two-tiered legal system, one for the rich, one for the oligarchs, one for corporations, and then one for us. I mean, they at this point have orchestrated virtually a tax boycott. Under Eisenhower, the highest tax rates for the wealthiest individuals and corporations was 91%. And out-of-control military. We used to challenge weapon systems. Now Trump just gave them a 10% increase, and they're running the wars in the Middle East. So essentially what happens is the system doesn't respond to the rights and grievances of the underclass, and that provides fertile territory for a demagogue like Trump, or in the case of Yugoslavia, Slobodan Milosevic, Radovan Karadzic, or go back to Weimar. Because in 1928, the Nazi Party in Weimar was polling in the single digits. Then you had the 1929 crash. How did Ebert and the Social Democrats respond? Well, they imposed draconian forms of austerity demanded by the international banking system that had bailed the government out, including abolishing unemployment insurance. And what I fear as we stand on the cusp of another economic dislocation, it's coming, even the New York Times a couple of weeks ago ran an editorial on this, is that everything is in place for some very frightening reconfigurations of American society. We already have a president in office who incites violence, who is openly carries out attacks against other ethnic and racial groups. I mean, the whole idea that 11 million undocumented workers, all of whom probably earn below the minimum wage, are somehow responsible for the economic freefall of the United States is patently absurd. But when they have a lock on the media systems, I mean, you discuss it, but you know, when even on MSNBC, are you ever going to hear a serious discussion of corporate capitalism and how it works?
Never.
That's been banished from the airwaves.
Yeah. And so we have now the Republican Party planning to impose austerity on us. This, you know, and when we look at what happened,
they just made these tax cuts permanent. I mean, this is insane.
Oh, but it goes beyond that. I mean, there are serious conversations going on inside the Republican Party right now about, can we use this debt? This was Jude Wanniski laid this out in '76 with his two Santa Claus theory. When Republicans are in power, run up the debt. When Democrats come into power, scream about the debt.
That's what Reagan did.
Right, and exactly. And in fact, Reagan was the first president to actually enact Wanniski's two Santa Claus theory plan. He tripled the national debt, and the debt is reaching the point now where within 10 years, our interest payments on the national debt,
this is in the New York Times, $900 billion.
Yeah, are going to exceed our military budget.
Right. Well, not just the military, education.
The military budget already has subsumed all of that stuff. And so what it is providing these guys is, and they're giddy about it,
of course,
the perfect excuse to impose austerity, literally, to say, we really can't afford federal long-term unemployment insurance. I mean, they've already cut it down to 1 year.
That's right.
We can no longer afford Social Security. We can no longer afford Medicare. Medicaid, we can't afford that. That's for poor people. And then they're going to get a court, if they get Kavanaugh on the court, who's going to go back to the Lochner era and say, Medicare and Social Security are actually unconstitutional.
Right.
They should be voluntary programs. And the minute they become voluntary programs, they're dead. This is a massive reconfiguration of America that we're right on the edge of. Nobody's talking about, except the Republicans that I know who are they're giddy. I can't come up with a better word. This is about to happen. We've been working on this since 1935.
No, it's what John Rosenthal calls our slow motion coup d'etat, coup d'etat in slow motion, and we are now coming to the denouement of that. And let's be clear, the Democratic Party has been culpable in this.
Oh, I agree. This the DLC.
I mean, this is not just a Republican.
In the late 80s. Yeah, this is, although.
But you are right. We are
parts of the Democratic Party are pulling away from that.
And
real
that's
quick
why the police in your town are carrying long-barreled weapons and wearing Kevlar vests and driving armored personnel carriers.
Right, because they're anticipating social unrest, which will happen if we have austerity. So, Chris Hedges, what do we do about this?
We have to, and the problem is it's not done overnight. We have to rebuild those popular movements that created a rational response with the breakdown of capitalism under Roosevelt in the 1930s.
Would this start with unions?
Of course. Unions, we have to rebuild. I mean, people like you and me who've been pushed to the margins of the media landscape because the subjects that we tackle are taboo. in the corporate landscape, including, of course, Comcast, which owns MSNBC, NPR, PBS is a wholly owned subsidiary now of the Koch brothers. So we have to rebuild institutions to pit power against power. But they have done a very effective job. And we just had this right to work law. I mean, this is also another track, that there is a constant assault on all of those mechanisms by which we can organize, gain self-knowledge and understanding, and resist. That's what the abolition of net neutrality is about. That's what Google algorithms, which are imposed on left-wing sites, Black Agenda Report, Counterpunch, Alternet, Truthdig, which I write for. We have seen referrals from impressions, which you type in, let's say, imperialism in Google. If I had written an article on imperialism a year or so ago, it would have come up with the other stuff. Now, though that referrals from impressions just in Truthdig, which Robert Shear's great website out of LA that I write a column every Monday, has fallen from over 700,000 to below 200,000.
Yeah, same thing happened to Alternet. It's
Alternet 63%. Yeah, World Socialist website, and I'm not a Trotskyite, but World Socialist website is over 83%. Black Agenda Report. This isn't by accident. This is by design, because the elites understand that across the political spectrum, they don't have, neoliberalism has no credibility left as an ideology. And so their critics have become more dangerous, and therefore their critics will be silenced. But that's just a small piece of the larger puzzle, which, as you correctly point out, is about to see us absolutely stripped of not only political power, because we've already been stripped of political power and civil liberties, but for, I would argue, upwards of 3/4 of the country, the ability to make a sustainable wage and have a living. I mean, the reconfiguration of wealth in this country, we have not seen. It's the greatest in American history. We haven't seen it since the Gilded Age.
They're taking us back to Dickens. Chris Hedges, America, The Farewell Tour is the new book. Yeah, it's brilliant. Chris, thanks so much for being with us. It's great to see you. Great to have you in the studio.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. It's 18 minutes past.